Hi, this is Bill Hammond here to talk today about planning for the Alzheimer's patient. And of course, what we're talking about in general is making sure that you have the right legal foundation in place so that you never find yourself out of money and out of options. The question for today is, how does this work as far as Medicaid qualification for a married couple where one of them needs nursing home care? In that event, what happens is they have to go through a process called division of assets. Let's take an example. Let's say that we've got a married couple, and let's say that the husband has Alzheimer's disease. Let's also say that the wife has been his caregiver, and then it's gotten to the point where she can no longer care for him. After she can no longer care for him, she places him in a facility, and then they have to figure out how they're going to pay for the cost of care. Of course, in our area, the cost of nursing home care, particularly memory care for an Alzheimer's patient, it depends, of course, but a good rule of thumb would be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $6,000, $6,500 per month, sometimes more. And of course, few families can afford to pay the $60,000, $70,000 per year that good memory care costs. Well, what they will do for a while, most likely, is they will probably private pay, write a check to the facility. If they were fortunate enough to buy long-term care insurance, then hopefully that will also go towards paying the cost of care. But ultimately, for most of my clients, they pretty quickly get to the point where they can no longer pay for the cost of care out of pocket. In those cases, what then happens is they go through a process where they qualify the one who needs nursing home care for Medicaid. The state calls this division of assets. Here's how it works. Let's say that this married couple has $100,000 in the bank. Well, first of all, the state would look at their assets and they would say certain things are exempt. You don't have to worry about them. That would be a house, a car, a prepaid funeral plan for both spouses, $1,500 cash value life insurance or term insurance would be exempt, and household goods, furniture, clothing, appliances, all those things. Those would all be exempt. I'd set them aside. I wouldn't worry about it. Everything else would count. Let's go back to our couple. I said they've got $100,000 in countable assets. What the state would say is the state would say put half on the side of the one who needs care, the husband in my example, and half on the side of the one who's at home, the wife in my example. Now the husband's now got $50,000 in this example on his side, and he would have to spend that down until it went to $2,000 in Kansas or less than $1,000 in Missouri. And once they got his side spent down, then he would be eligible for Medicaid. His wife would be allowed to keep her half of the assets, $50,000 in this case, and then she'd keep a certain amount of income. Well, what's it okay to spend things on? That's one of the questions that my clients always ask me. And of course, there's certain things that would be very clear. For instance, they could of course always pay the cost of the nursing home. As I mentioned, in our area, that might be $6,000, $6,500 per month or more. Absolutely okay to pay the cost of nursing home care. But what they also might consider is if the wife is still driving, they might trade in their car and buy a new or newer car. And as long as they did that after he was already in the nursing home and after we had that snapshot set where we started the spend down, then for them to buy a new car, everything they spend on that new car would come right off of his side and be part of the spend down. They also should look around and see if there's any home repair that needs to be done. Perhaps, fixing up the roof, new heater, new air conditioner. Perhaps the furniture's gotten torn up or the carpeting and caring for him. Absolutely okay to replace those things and to purchase new. And once again, all of that would come right off of his side. We also ought to determine whether or not they've got any debt that needs to be paid off. Is there a mortgage, credit cards, those types of things? Those too ought to be paid off. Have they prepaid their funeral plans? Remember I said earlier prepaid funeral plans are exempt. Well, if they haven't prepaid their funeral plans after he's placed in this example, now would be a good time to do that because the entire spend down amount would come right off of his side. So these are all of the types of things that they ought to consider. What happens once they've met the spend down? Well, once they've met the spend down, in this example, the wife is what we call the community spouse, the one who's at home. And she's going to be entitled to what the law calls a minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance of at least $1,750 per month. She'll keep her income, perhaps Social Security, pension, whatever, and if hers is greater than that $1,750, she'll just keep it. But if hers is less than that $1,750, then she'll keep enough of his to raise her up to that $1,750 per month level. If there's anything left over, then his income minus $62 a month in Kansas or $30 a month in Missouri, and also minus the cost of his health care, will then be an ongoing copay to the nursing home. One of the other things you have to keep in mind, too, is that I used the example, I said our couple has $100,000 in assets. What if they had $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 in assets? How much could the at-home spouse keep? Would the at-home spouse keep half of that? The answer is no. Actually, in our states, the most that the at-home spouse can keep currently is $109,560. Now, that's a number set by the federal government, and it changes from year to year, but right now, that's the maximum. So if we had a couple with $300,000, they'd have to spend that all the way down until the at-home spouse kept her $109,560, and the rest of that then will have been spent down on some of the types of things we talked about, fixing up the house, car, furnace, new roof, whatever. Lots of planning steps that can be taken. And in later videos, I will also talk about some of the planning steps that we can take to protect even more for the community spouse while making sure that the nursing home spouse gets the care that he or she needs. So anyway, as I mentioned right off the bat, the key here is to make sure, number one, that your loved one with Alzheimer's gets the care they need, and secondly, that as a family, you are never out of money and out of options. So I want to thank you once again for tuning into these videos. If you have further questions that we have not answered in this video, please feel free to poke around the website a little bit, because we've got all kinds of resources on here on how to not only care for your loved one with Alzheimer's, but how also to make sure that your funds are protected and to make sure that, quite frankly, you're never out of money and out of options. So we look forward to talking with you in future videos. Thank you.